Alright, what is up, y'all? Welcome back. We are going to be reacting to Problem with Gen Z. Alright, here we go.
Have you ever tried to have a conversation with someone, but every time you try to get a word in, someone else comes along and talks over you? That's kind of what it's like being Gen Z. Even though we're all grown up now, every time we try to talk, someone older comes along to tell us to shut up. It's kind of annoying, honestly. Every week,
True. True. Like, what is it? I'm sorry. If I think of it, I'll.
some glorified blogger calling themselves a journalist writes an article talking about everything wrong with our generation. But the moment any one of us tries to speak up, there's five.
Yeah, I feel like our generation gets, like, stereotyped a lot. Like, everybody thinks we're, um, like, everybody thinks we're all these things, like we're lazy, we're internet kids, we're spoiled, like that type of like stereotype. I think older people will just see like a small side of it and think that's like how the whole generation is. Like I feel like I feel like that's more of the case. Like a few of them are definitely like that, but not all of us. Like we get stereotyped a lot. I don't think there's too much different between our generation versus previous ones. I just think it's more prevalent because of the internet becoming a thing and all that stuff.
More people telling us why we're wrong. Disagreements between different generations isn't a new thing, but when you're Gen Z, you're stuck in this weird position where nobody respects your opinion, but they always feel a need to insert themselves in your conversation. We're at the bottom of the totem pole beneath the washed up millennials and our Gen X parents. And there's also the baby boomers.
Yeah, my parents are millennials, like so I don't know how like Gen X. I think Gen X is what is Gen X like the like late 60s, it's like throughout the 70s. Like mm, I don't know.
But they're kind of on the way out. I don't sit here and pretend to know what it's like to be Gen X or a millennial, but everyone seems to think they know what it's like to be Gen Z.
Right, I think most older generations, um, I feel like most generations like hate on like the next generation or like the younger generation. Like I think that all of them, from to my knowledge, I think all of them has their ups and downs.
I understand that you were my age once too, but believe it or not, things are
Like I feel like
different.
there's
Don't
like
act
a
like when you were
stereotype.
my age, you didn't have to turn your phone backwards to take a selfie. I noticed that the people who do this the most tend to be millennials. Probably because before we became the worst generation, they were the ones who got all the hate. And I will admit, a lot of their experiences are similar to ours. But instead of being chill about it, a lot of millennials just come off as bitter.
3 ways Google's Notebook LM helps me study for finals. First, it stores all my study materials in one place, from notes to textbook.
Rejected again, bro. How hard is it to find a new job these days? Nobody wants to hire anybody young. Hey man, at least they didn't ghost you this time like most companies. I still haven't heard back from that one place. Well. Looks like Gen Z is finally starting to figure it out. Welcome to the real world, kids. This isn't anything new. I remember when they told us, just go to college, get your degree, and it'll all work out. All lies. You might as well give it up now. There's no hope for the future. You get that degree and no one wants to hire you. So you end up working a soul-sucking customer service job like this for 10 years. Then your girlfriend leaves you because she says the spark is gone, but you're too drained to even care. Now you drown your sorrows with video games and a geek bar every night. But at least they added Goku to Fortnite, so you have something to live for. Hey, are you guys even listening to me? What was that guy talking about over there? I don't know. Bro thinks we're listening to that yap sesh. Facts, bro. Yo, check out this girl that DM me yesterday. Oh, she kind of bad though. I'm saying. I think that the relationship between
I ain't gonna lie, that's that's true. That is true. We do that. I notice a lot of people around my age do that. Like we do that, and I ain't gonna lie, I'm guilty too. I'm guilty of doing like that. But yeah.
Millennials and Gen Z is interesting because they went through the same things we're going through only a few years before. But our experiences are still drastically different in some areas. Computers and the internet started taking over the world when they were teens and young adults, while we were born into the digital age. Social media changed the way.
I don't know. Yes, we were, but I feel like social media didn't like become like huge. At least from my experience, didn't become like huge till I was like late elementary school, like third, like fourth grade or so. Like I don't feel like we were necessarily like born into it. Like was it like I grew up? My first phone was a house phone, and that wasn't like an uncommon thing. Like now everybody's getting phones at like 6, 7 years old, like smartphones and stuff. Like I didn't get one until I was like a smartphone until I was like 14. And I feel like that's not like rare in this generation. Like in our generation, I feel like it's this next one that's like really like born into it. And I mean that could just be my experience, but I don't think 100% we were. I think we were like as like growing up, like it was like like the start of like social media and stuff. The internet, yes, we were born into the internet, but social media, if we're talking about social media, yeah, I don't think that like popped off till like I was like late elementary school, like 9, 10 years old type of thing.
They communicated with each other, and it changed the way we grew up entirely. I've noticed that while the average Gen Z mind is filled with TikTok brain rot and Vine references, millennials as a generation seem to carry a lot of angst. I suppose that being the first generation of the digital era, millennials came into a world that promised them a lot and didn't really deliver on any of it. They watched the rules of the world change, while every generation before them told them it was their fault. They were the young, dumb kids once, and now Gen Z is walking in their footsteps and calling them old. I think that deep down, Gen Z does have a lot of respect for millennials for being the ones who walk so we could run. Even though they are kinda cringe, they're some of the only people who understand what it's like to be in our position. I think a lot of us just wish that they'd spend less time lecturing us like we're still a bunch of dumb kids and speak to us like adults. A lot of us might still be young, but ultimately millennials are some of our biggest allies when we aren't arguing about who grew up with the better childhood. Millennials also need to learn that sometimes you just gotta let young people have things. We've all seen that one 35-year-old still trying to cling to their youth, making everything awkward. Like, chill, Unc. We know you don't really listen to Cardi like that. It's time for you to get into jazz. The other group Gen Z tends to interact a lot with are Gen X. Mainly because for most of us, this is the generation our parents belong to. Gen X is really interesting because they're kind of like a hybrid between the baby boomers that came before them and the millennials that came after them. They tend to be a little more progressive and open-minded like millennials, but they also have tendencies that remind you that they're still an older, more traditional generation. What's wrong, son? You don't seem like yourself. Yeah, it's just things have been kind of hard lately. I wouldn't say I'm depressed, but I just don't feel okay. Well, son, you can always talk to me about how you feel. Your mental health is just as important as your physical health. Wow, really? Thanks, Mom. Of course. In fact, I think I know what your problem is. You do? Yeah. It's because you're always on that damn phone. I swear.
I feel like this is how a lot of older generations talk to us. Like, I mean, I might have just like, was it my parents are millennials, so I don't know like the Gen X stereotype like thing, like Gen X parenting. I don't understand that necessarily, but um, yeah, like that's crazy. Like,
Swear, your generation is just addicted to technology. And
like I would say I would like this, but sorry, my volume cut out. Um, I didn't hear that last part, but I feel like millennials are like that, but just like less intense about it. Like they're more open-minded to it,
it's just things have been kind of hard
more
lately.
understanding.
I wouldn't say I'm depressed. Of course. In fact, I think I know what your problem is. You do? Yeah. It's because you're always on that damn phone. I swear, your generation is just addicted to technology. And that's why you have so many mental health issues. Back in my day, we used to actually talk to people. and go outside, Where are you going? Sit back down. I'm turning this into a lecture. Gen X is kinda in the position the baby boomers were in when the millennials were our age. A lot of them are the ones interviewing us for jobs, running the businesses we work in, and are now running to represent us in our government. Think about it.
Oh yeah, no. Was it employers, like people that hire you? They there's so much like bias towards us. I feel like hiring managers or whatever, like very biased towards like the younger generation and stuff. Cause they'll like tend to hire somebody that's like more like them because like there's just such a negative stereotype about us. Like
That our parents are now the ones running the country. Gen X are the last generation who grew up without the internet, so their generation has a very unique perspective. They're still really old school and don't always understand things like social media, video games, and pop culture, but they can at least open a PDF on their own after you show them how. But as much as I make fun of my parents for not knowing about newer technology, I still have to ask my mom how to address an envelope whenever I need to mail something. The contrast between Gen Z and Gen X is really starting to show because now that Gen Z has reached adulthood, our ideas about life are starting to clash. We've grown up seeing people making careers out of things we used to call hobbies. And while a lot of us want to pursue something we're passionate about, our Gen X parents don't always understand. At least not until you start making money from it. Mom, Dad, I have something I want to tell you. Oh, honey, it's okay. Your father and I always knew you liked boys. Wait, what? No, I'm not coming out. I just think I really want to pursue a career in music. I think I have what it takes to make it. Oh, son, are you sure? You know we support whatever you do, but maybe we should try something a bit more realistic. Yeah, like what happened when you wanted to be a doctor? Dad, the last time I said that I was 4. Besides, one of my songs blew up last month and I made $20K on Spotify. Well, why didn't you just say that? You need to hop in the booth. Wait, stay still. I need to take a picture for everyone on Facebook.
Not here to sell you some pipe dream or get rich quick nonsense. Actually, I don't promise you anything at all.
My Little Baby, a hip-hop superstar. I still remember when I used to change your diapers. Mom! I know how frustrating it can be when it seems like your parents don't support your goals. But I try to remember that they only have our best interests at heart. And for a lot of Gen X, financial security is really important. It seems like parents switch up once you're finally making money, but it's just their way of knowing that you're gonna be okay without them. Gen Z is finally reaching adulthood, and as more of us become adults, I think we are beginning to realize that something is different about us. We're coming in as the most educated generation, we're far less likely to commit crime, and we're also more racially and culturally diverse compared to previous generations. But there is this stigma of Gen Z being the generation of hypersensitive, moody, depressed adults. Millennials had oat milk lattes and avocado toast, and Gen Z has mental health days and antidepressants. I think we're going through what boomers went through with cigarettes. Everyone knew that smoking was bad, but didn't realize it was that bad until doctors began linking it to lung cancer. And while hardly any members of Gen Z actually smoke cigarettes, I think we're beginning to see the effects of the first generation raised on social media and YouTube videos. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to sound like a parent saying the reason you're depressed is because of that phone. What I'm saying is, despite all of these different ways to connect with others online, the world seems like it's becoming more individualistic. We're trading genuine community for online interaction, and I think Gen Z is the biggest casualty of this. We live in a weird time now where everyone feels like they don't owe anyone anything, not even kindness or respect. Everyone has walls up and they don't want to let people in. And that's why I think Gen Z is stuck in a loneliness epidemic. And the solution is a bit more complicated than I think people realize. Older generations always preach, young people need to get out there and make friends the old-fashioned way. But even in traditional settings, it can still be hard to connect with people. Okay, team, that's a wrap on that section of the meeting. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, you in the back. Are there any social events in the office? I've just been here a few months and still feel like I don't really know anybody. Oh, that is a great question, young man. We actually have a social event next Wednesday at noon. We're doing 90s trivia. You should come. That sounds great, but I was born in 2000. I don't know anything about the 90s. Ooh, Let's put a pin in that, and we'll circle back and try to synergize a solution. Maybe give others a chance to piggyback on that. Even within Gen Z, if you're not someone who's interested in spending your weekends partying or drinking, it's hard to even hang out casually with others. Even dating has a lot of Gen Z feeling really confused. I hear a lot about how Gen Z is very sex negative, and a lot of research shows that Gen Z on average is having a lot less sex compared to other generations. Obviously, the lack of genuine in-person connections makes it difficult to find a partner, but I also think a lot of Gen Z simply doesn't want to participate in hookup culture either. But social media makes it seem like everyone does these things, and that you should too. And if you aren't, you're weird or a Puritan because you simply don't enjoy hooking up with someone random. So it's not a surprise that a lot of Gen Z adults walk around full of guilt and insecurity from a lifetime of comparing themselves to others on social media. Oddly enough, I don't think Gen Z is avoiding sex or clutching their pearls like a southern grandma at the thought of sleeping with someone. We've had so much sex thrown at us through hookups and adult models desperate to get you to click on their link in bio that I think a lot of us just desire something real. It's damaging for all young people, but speaking as a guy, I think a lot of young men don't have a relationship with women outside of adult content and one-night stands. So a lot of Gen Z is just seeking closeness with another person. With how hard it is to connect with others now,
Yeah, I think with a lot of us like having like access to like literally anything just at our fingertips, I think we're so desensitized to like we're so desensitized to that sort of like stuff and action. I think like people are just so used to it or whatever. I also think people like start getting their minds warped. Like I've noticed just having conversations with other people like my age, like when I was in high school or anything, just thinking like every girl they see is just gonna like want to hook up with them or whatever or like stuff like that. I wouldn't say. I mean, I don't know what's like in other generations. I'm Gen Z, but I feel like hookup culture. I wouldn't say necessarily less, but I mean it might be less. I don't know, but um, God, my mind just literally took a pause. Um, I feel like there's some point people get like so desensitized to it. It's like you know what I'm trying to say. I can't think right now. I just let my mind literally just blanked.
a lot of us are seeking a kind of intimacy on a more personal level before a physical one. You know, I was thinking we could have a little more fun. What did you have in mind? We could keep the party going in your bed. Oh, I like the sound of. Hello? Yo, bro, new update just dropped. We running it or what? Tell him you're busy. I'm already there, bro. Send an invite. All right, bro, I need a 30 piece with a side of fries. You got me? Oh, on me. I cracked two, bro. They're one shot in there. They're one shot. Another big thing people
That's some real stuff. I ain't gonna lie. That's real. But
say about Gen Z is that we're very sensitive, which people usually say to me we're easily offended by things. And I will admit that there are some younger people who need to grow some thicker skin, but I think that this is a reflection of the reality that Gen Z is a generation that wants to create a culture of respect. The average Zoomer is probably a bit more aware of people's cultural sensitivities compared to previous generations, and I think in general, Gen Z values empathy and emotional intelligence in their relationships. But it also seems like now that we're older, being nonchalant is the new trend. And I think it's also what's pushing us further apart from each other. Connecting with other people requires you to open yourself up and be vulnerable with others. But a lot of people are so afraid of getting hurt that they'd rather pretend to not care. But this doesn't really work for everyone, because a guy like me will be like, whatever, I don't care, and then I'll go home and cry. But despite all of this, there are still a lot of us who aren't on the same page when it comes to what's acceptable nowadays. We've all got that one friend with no filter that you can't take anywhere. Bro, it's good to see you again. Glad we can catch up. Facts, bro. Life's been crazy. You been good though?
Drag that in. Yes. There's a lot of places.
Yeah, bro, you know me. I just been chilling. You? Man, let me tell you about this one coworker that's been getting on my nerves. Ah, man, that's the worst. Yeah, I can't stand her fat self. Like, honestly, bro, these fat girls need to shut up. Like, it's always fat people hating on me. Like, low-key, bro, if you're fat, you shouldn't vote. They should put up a scale at the voting booth.
I ain't gonna lie. Like when you're around somebody like that, it is so embarrassing. it's so embarrassing. Like, I ain't gonna lie. If you're around somebody and they just start going off on these things, like, I'm like, dude, like, quiet down. And they'll just keep talking. Like, no, bro. Like, no, it's so embarrassing. It really is just so embarrassing.
And you can't come in if you're too fat. What's everybody looking at? But on the other side of things, there are also a lot of people who try to use their understanding of emotions to take advantage of people as well. Nowadays, it's really common for people to try to weaponize therapy language to justify their own bad behaviors. Hey, I'm not trying to be mean, but our reports are due tomorrow and we still don't have your part yet. Wow, okay. Crossing my boundaries here. Are you trying to trigger me by bringing up my past traumas? Huh? What are you talking about? I'm just asking about the project. Oh, so now you're gaslighting me, belittling my trauma and acting like a narcissist. What trauma are you talking about? Oh my God, you're gonna make me relive this. In college, I had to submit a report once, and I got a D on it. It ruined me for years. Okay, that's not trauma. That's just something you didn't like. You're such a manipulator. When it comes to Gen Z, I think a lot of
I wouldn't say that's. I just haven't interacted with nobody like that. I don't know if that's common or not. Like, I've just never personally witnessed somebody like that crazy. I feel like yes, that is like a definitely huge stereotype. Like, people put that as a stereotype on us. I don't see it. Like, I genuinely don't. I think there's a few bad apples that are like that, but for the majority of us, we're just not like that. Like, am I wrong? Like, we're not like that.
times we have a bad habit of using buzzwords like mental health and depression to describe the ways we feel. And they might not always be accurate. And sometimes this leads to older generations thinking we're all moody and can't get anything done. But I don't think Gen Z is more sensitive than previous generations. I even think we've been desensitized to a lot of things thanks to the internet. But I think that we're some of the first to actually have the vocabulary and education necessary to have a dialogue about things like anxiety and depression. 50-year-olds don't really talk about their mental health. That's why you have so many older people who are bitter and easily agitated all the time. They get anxious and depressed too, but outside of therapy, they don't have much of an outlet to talk about these things. Gen Z is pushing for that to change. But unfortunately, this does come with challenges, especially for young Gen Z men. And I know that conversations about men's mental health are usually only brought up to take away from talking about women's mental health. But as a young Gen Z adult man, I'm just asking you to hear me out here. I remember hanging out with my homies one day and I asked them an interesting question. Yeah, boy, I'm cooking you. Bro, you always cheating, bro. Bro, how am I cheating? You're just buns. Nah, I got next, bro. I'm about to clap you. Yo, bros. Random question. What's up, bro? Bro, like, does your dad have friends? What do you mean? Like, does your dad have a bunch of guys he just hangs out with? Kind of like we're doing now. Now that I think about it, I don't think he does. Yeah, mine neither. He just kind of hangs out with my mom and that's it. Yeah, same. You guys think we'll be like that when we're older too? I hope not, because I'm about to hit this dude with the meanest Kamehameha. Bro, come on, that's not fair. And that conversation kind of opened my eyes to the fact that for a lot of men, it's very easy to find yourself socially isolated. I think that for a lot of guys, balancing work or school, taking care of yourself, and pursuing your personal goals can cause you to withdraw from your community because you're too busy just trying to survive. And I'm not saying this is entirely exclusive to men. A lot of my female friends have said that they struggle connecting with other women too, because a lot of young women either just want to complain about men or only come to them to talk about their problems and then go ghost once they feel better. But unfortunately, as a guy, that's not a perspective I can really comment meaningfully on. I do know that at least for women, they do tend to rely on each other more than men do when they're going through things. And I wish more men felt the same way. Instead, a lot of young guys are conditioned to think that the world doesn't care about their problems, so they never reach out for support. So when you're laying in that king-size bed with no queen, sometimes you gotta turn on the goth girlfriend ASMR roleplay and cry yourself to sleep. However, I wish that this was something that was completely harmless, but unfortunately, I think we all know that some guys have unhealthy ways of dealing with their problems, and they do and say things that are harmful to others. Incel is a word that's been thrown around a lot recently to describe guys that have these beliefs. And this might be a hot take, but I don't believe most of these guys truly are hopeless rejects. I know having empathy for what's associated with some of the worst parts of this ideology is hard, but I think the truth is that a lot of young men are simply just misguided. We know that being a Gen Z adult is a challenging and confusing time, and I think that a lot of young men are seeking guidance for handling these challenges. Things like bettering yourself, financial success, mental health, personal fitness, finding happiness and fulfillment in life.
I also think with like internet culture and like the rise of like Andrew Tate and that whole red pill space, like a lot of men like fall into like that trap of like you needing to be successful, like type of thing. Like you need to be nonstop, like from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep. Just be working. Like just be working on something, like whatever. And like if you're not making like 100K a month, like and was it it's just so common because I mean there's so many ways to make money online now, but I also feel like it's a lot of hard work, and I don't feel like that's necessarily like people don't think like that's not common because there's just so many of them. And but just think, out of all the men in the world, there's just one person feeding you this information. There's just one person who did become successful after all the thousands, millions have failed. Like whatever. But I think people just think that's like common to be able to do. And like thinking it's easy, like get rich quick, like it's like people thinking it's easy and then give up after like 2 weeks of doing so because they didn't see instant success, like type of thing. I think patience is a big thing too.
Life, and yes, even getting a girlfriend are all struggles young people face. And a lot of times, you're gonna fail when you're chasing these things. Sadly, for a lot of young men, there isn't anyone there to help them pick themselves back up when they do. So a lot of guys feel abandoned when they're trying their hardest to be their best. No one is talking to young men. And sadly, the only ones reaching out to them are influencers and podcasters with a harmful agenda. Thanks for letting me borrow your calculator, bro. You really came in clutch for me. No problem, bro. I was just chilling watching this new podcast. Ah, dude, you're watching these guys? You gotta turn that kind of stuff off. You're gonna be scaring the shotties. Bro, it's not even that bad. They just talk about self-improvement. Welcome back to Trad and Chad, the show where we hate women and you should too. Bro, it's just jokes, bro. Just keep watching. Listen, guys, you can't just be laying in bed all day. You need to get up and do something productive with your day. You can't sit around doing nothing wondering why your life isn't getting better. See, bro, they're all about positivity. And also, women shouldn't be allowed to vote. Men are clearly way smarter than them. Look here, research shows that boys go to college to get more knowledge and girls.
That's exactly how it is. Like that's just exactly how it is. Like that's how a lot of these podcasts are. They spit out these good, like this good information. Like yes, like do some if you really want something, get up and do it. Like get up, do it, be productive, and if you really want it, then actually get it, right? But then they'll just say some absolutely wild stuff like this, like
Girls go to Jupiter to get more stupider. You can't argue with science. Exactly. And liberals want you to think. You were saying? Okay, I didn't expect them to say all that. Mental health for guys is tricky because I think a lot of men's mental health advocates are really just preying on vulnerable young men for financial gain. They aren't actually trying to help, but are instead turning young men's pain into prejudice and feeding them a toxic ideology that only further alienates them from their community. I think a big mistake a lot of guys make is thinking that they need to do everything alone. So many young men decide they want to make a change in their life and they immediately shut themselves away and try and lock in. But honestly, this is the most
I just went through that.
counterproductive way to go about it. Isolation isn't the answer, community is. No matter what your goals are, you'll reach them a lot faster if you work with other people to get there. Whether you want to get jacked, chase your dreams, or even find someone to love. Even the dorkiest, most introverted guy can get a girl if he has the right homies in his corner to bring out the best in him. I know that if you're a young guy who genuinely tries his best to be a good person, it can be really confusing when the sentiment you hear from other people is that you're trash and that it's your fault the world is the way it is. I think all of us in Gen Z have heard that a million times regardless of gender. It seems unfair when you're blamed for the actions of other people you've never even met for things you would never even do. But I think of it like a house on fire. Even if you didn't set it on fire, if you're not doing something to help put it out, you're still kind of just letting it burn. And you might not be a firefighter who's ready to rush into action to put it out yourself, but there are still other ways we can all be useful. I'm not saying you need to be a pick-me and take accountability for things that aren't even your fault. I'm just saying that you have the ability to choose how other people view you on an individual level. And you don't need to do it alone. You shouldn't expect to do it alone either. I know I said before that Gen Z is finding it hard to connect with each other, but that doesn't mean that there aren't people out there looking for it. I think Gen Z's greatest strength right now is the power of choice. Throughout our entire childhood, the world was constantly transforming. And now that we're adults, we're walking into what is basically uncharted territory, meaning that we get to decide what the future holds. I think that embracing community is something we should do more. Individuality is important, it's how we express ourselves. But we shouldn't be afraid to share ourselves with others too. When I go to the store, my mom always expects me to bring her back a chocolate bar. And for a while, I didn't really understand why. If she wanted a chocolate bar so bad, why doesn't she ever just buy one herself? But I realized she was teaching me a lesson about thoughtfulness. And if I was at the store getting things for myself, maybe I should think of someone else for a second too. A chocolate bar costs about $1, and that's a pretty small price to pay to make someone else's day that much brighter. Thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, and thanks for 40K. Peace.
Think, are we the worst generation, or are we a bad generation, or do we got a bright future ahead of us? Who knows? But that's gonna be it. Thank y'all for watching. Stay safe. Peace.